The sun was merciless that morning, a burning fire hanging over Wagadu, turning the earth into cracked scars of dust and silence. The wind carried nothing but sand, and the quiet cries of a people who had learned to survive with empty plates and heavy hearts. Children stood barefoot on the hot ground, their tiny shadows stretching across the dirt like forgotten prayers. Some watched the passing convoys with faint hope, others with eyes too tired to dream anymore. And on this day, our story begins. Captain Ibrahim Traoré was on patrol, not as a distant leader in a polished office, but as a man who believed that a nation can only be led by walking among its people. His convoy rolled slowly through the broken streets, engines rumbling like thunder in a dry sky. But then, something happened. Something so small, yet so powerful, that it could shake even the strongest heart. A young soldier, a starving child, and a single act of kindness that would echo across a nation. As Ibrahim stepped down from his vehicle, the dust curled around his boots. His eyes didn't just scan for threats, they searched for truth, for pain, for the hidden stories no report could ever capture. Because he believed one thing deeply, backhand index pointing right, you cannot lead a people if you refuse to feel their suffering. Nearby, soldiers were distributing emergency supplies. It wasn't just military duty, it was a lifeline Ibrahim himself had demanded. Food, water, hope, a chance to remind the forgotten that they still mattered. Among those soldiers was Private Jamil, only 23, with eyes that still carried innocence. He wasn't there for glory. He wasn't there for medals. He was there to serve. But while the others focused on paperwork and procedure, Jamil saw her, a little girl, thin as a shadow, dressed in a torn pink dress now stained the color of dust. Her lips were dry, her feet were bleeding, and her eyes were the quiet scream of a child who had learned hunger too young. She didn't beg. She didn't push through the crowd. She simply stood there, trembling, as if hope itself might break her fragile body. And then, slowly her hand went to her stomach. Not in drama, not in desperation, but in surrender. Jamil froze. He knew the rules. No papers, no guardian, no registration, no food. But he also knew something else. Backhand index pointing right, some moments in life do not wait for permission. So while sweat rolled down his face and the heat gnawed at his strength, Jamil reached into his own pack. The rations meant to keep him alive through the long, burning day. Rice, dried meat, water, biscuits, everything. He walked toward her, quietly, calmly. No speeches, no cameras, no applause. He knelt in the dust so he wouldn't tower over her tiny frame. His voice softened, a soldier speaking not as a warrior, but as a brother. He placed the food into her shaking hands. He opened the water bottle and lifted it gently to her lips so she wouldn't drink too fast. And in that moment, her empty eyes began to glow, not with joy but with shock, as if kindness was something she had forgotten existed. From a distance, Ibrahim watched. His heart tightened, because this wasn't strategy. This wasn't politics. This was humanity in its purest form. And sometimes, that is more powerful than any weapon. But Ibrahim also knew, backhand index pointing right, a soldier giving away his own rations could mean weakness on the field. Backhand index pointing right, breaking protocol could lead to punishment. Backhand index pointing right, leadership means choosing between the rulebook and the heart. So the question burned inside him. What should a true leader do now? Punish the soldier? Ignore the moment? Or honor the courage of compassion, even when it defies the system? Stay with me, because what happens next will test loyalty, obedience, love, and the true meaning of leadership, in a way that will leave you speechless. Tears began to fall from the little girl's eyes. Not loud, not dramatic, but silent tears that carved clean rivers through the dust on her cheeks. She held the food as if she feared it might disappear, as if letting go meant waking up from a dream. To her, that food was not just food. It was life. It was hope. It was a promise that the world still had kindness left in it. Some soldiers pretended not to notice. Some looked away because sometimes real suffering is too painful to face. But Ibrahim Traoré could not look away. He stood there, frozen, not as a commander, but as a human being watching a young soldier live the very meaning of service. Jamil hadn't acted for applause. He hadn't waited for permission. He hadn't thought of consequences. He had seen pain and answered with sacrifice. The little girl still didn't move. She held the food to her chest like treasure. Her body shook, not from the heat, but from the shock of receiving kindness in a world that had shown her so little. And right there, something shattered inside Ibrahim's chest. He had seen war. He had walked among the fallen. He had carried the burden of decisions that haunted him in the dark. But this simple act of love struck deeper than any bullet ever could. He began walking toward Jamil. Each step was slow, purposeful, heavy. The soldiers stiffened. Conversations faded. Even the wind seemed to pause as Captain Ibrahim Traoré stopped in front of the young private. Jamil turned. For a brief second, fear flashed in his eyes. Had he broken protocol? Had he weakened the unit by giving away his rations? Would he be punished for choosing compassion over regulations? The checkpoint fell silent. Even the waiting families watched, their hopes hanging in the air like fragile leaves in a storm. Ibrahim's voice broke the silence. Steady, firm, but never cruel. Private Jamil, that was your meal for the day, wasn't it? Jamil swallowed. Yes, Captain, it was. And you gave it away. All of it. Yes, sir. I did. No excuses. No hesitation. Just truth. Around them, some soldiers waited for discipline. Because the military is built on readiness, and a hungry soldier is a weaker soldier. A weaker soldier is a risk. By those rules, Jamil had broken the code. But Ibrahim was not just a man of rules. He was a man of principle. He knew that across the world, in glowing offices, in polished halls, in expensive conference rooms, powerful people spoke beautifully about sacrifice, compassion, and service, but very few ever paid the price for those words, had quietly done what leaders preached but rarely practiced. Yet here, under the burning sun of Bogdogo, a 23-year-old soldier, he had given everything he had, so a starving child wouldn't fade away. Ibrahim slowly turned to look at the little girl. She had finally begun to eat, not greedily but desperately, like someone who had forgotten what it felt like to be full. Tears still streamed down her face, mixing with crumbs and dust. Each bite was a heartbeat, each swallow, a return to life. Do you know her name? Ibrahim asked softly. No, sir, Jamil replied. She didn't or couldn't speak. And yet you still gave her your food? Without papers, without recognition. Jamil breathed in. Captain, I saw a child who was suffering, and I had food. That's all. No politics, no strategy, just truth. The kind of truth the world sometimes forgets. For a moment, Ibrahim said nothing. The silence grew heavy. Every soldier waited for the verdict. Every villager held their breath. Then Ibrahim spoke. Private Jamil, the problem is not that you gave her your food. He paused. The problem is that you should never have been forced to make that choice. Jamil blinked, confused. The soldiers listened. The villagers leaned closer. Our system, Ibrahim continued, his voice rising so every soul could hear him. Our protocols, our paperwork, our procedures, they are meant to protect and serve our people. But when a child like this must rely on the personal sacrifice of a soldier just to eat. He gestured toward the girl, still trembling, still eating as tears fell from her chin. Then our system is broken. His words hit the air like thunder. Some soldiers stared at the ground. Others felt pride swell in their chests. Because this was not anger. This was truth. Across this nation, Ibrahim said, voice steady with emotion, people speak of honor. They speak of sacrifice. They speak of serving the people. But how many of them, he asked quietly, would give away their own meal like you just did? Silence. Only the wind answered. He turned back to Jamil. And so today, Private, I do not see a soldier who broke protocol. He stepped closer. I see a soldier who understands the true meaning of service. Jamil's eyes filled, not with weakness, but with relief and strength. And from this day forward, Ibrahim declared, no child will be denied food because of paperwork. If a child is hungry, we feed them. His voice deepened. Not tomorrow, not later, not after signatures and approvals. Now. The soldiers nodded. The villagers whispered. Something changed in the air. Something powerful, something hopeful. Leaders command with authority. But great leaders, they lead with heart. Ibrahim placed a hand on Jamil's shoulder. You did not weaken this unit, he said softly. You reminded it why it exists. And as those words sank in, the camera, the world returns to the little girl. Still crying, still eating, still clinging to the first act of love she had received in far too long. And in that moment, one truth becomes undeniable. Backhand index pointing right, a nation does not rise through power alone. It rises through compassion. But what Ibrahim would do next, the decision he was about to make, would not only test the military, it would test the soul of leadership itself. Stay with me, because this story is far from over, and the lesson that follows will change everything. He walked toward the little girl, slowly, gently, as if approaching a fragile piece of glass that might shatter with the slightest touch. She looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes, still clutching her food like a lifeline. Her thin arms wrapped around those rations as if someone might snatch them away. Ibrahim didn't tower over her like an officer. He knelt down, just as Jamil had done, lowering himself to her world, her height, her pain. His hand rested softly on her trembling shoulder. His voice, though steady, carried the weight of sorrow. The real problem, he said quietly, is that we have allowed this to become normal. He looked around, at the dust, at the cracked buildings, at the thin faces watching him with uncertain hope. We have accepted, he continued, voice thick with emotion, that some children will simply fall through the cracks. We have turned compassion into paperwork. We have created a world where a starving child needs documents just to earn the right to eat. His words hung in the air like thunder. He rose to his feet, and when he spoke again, his voice carried the strength of a man who refused to accept injustice any longer. This ends today, right here, right now. Whispers spread like wind through dry grass. Some nodded. Some looked uneasy, because change is frightening, especially for those comfortable with broken systems. One senior officer stepped forward cautiously. Captain, with respect, we have regulations. We can't just... Can't what? Ibrahim snapped, not in cruelty but in righteous fire. Can't feed hungry children? Can't respond to suffering when it stands in front of us? Tell me, Commander, what exactly is it we cannot do? The officer swallowed, struggling. If we start making exceptions, if we bend protocol, how do we keep order? How do we ensure fair distribution? Fair distribution? Ibrahim repeated, and now his voice trembled with anger and grief. He pointed toward the little girl. Look at her. Look at her. The entire checkpoint turned. She weighs less than a sack of grain. Her feet are bleeding. She is eating like someone who has not tasted hope in days. And you stand here talking to me about fair distribution? Silence. A silence so deep it felt holy. Private Jamil did not break protocol, Ibrahim declared. He revealed that our protocol is broken. He looked at Jamil now, and there was no confusion in his expression anymore. Only pride. Pure. Undeniable. Pride. But this story, Ibrahim continued, his tone softening, does not end here. He inhaled slowly, because he knew the next decision would echo far beyond this dusty checkpoint. What I am about to do, some will call reckless. Some will call political. Some will say it violates every principle of military order. He glanced at the soldiers, at the villagers, at the world watching. Then he reached for his own pack. Deliberately, calmly, he removed everything inside, his water, his rations, his entire sustenance for the day. And then, He slowly unpinned his captain's insignia. Gasps rippled through the crowd like a wave. Ibrahim walked straight to Jamil and held the insignia up. "This symbol," he said softly, "is meant to represent leadership, authority, power, the right to command." He paused. "But today, Private Jamil, you showed me what leadership truly means. Leadership is not rank. It is not medals. It is not salutes. It is character. It is seeing suffering and refusing to look away." He pressed his rations into Jamil's hands. "You gave away your meal," he said gently. "So today you will share mine, because soldiers who protect the weak should never starve for their compassion." The checkpoint felt like it was breathing again, but differently now. Fuller, deeper, more human. But Ibrahim was not finished. He turned, his voice rising, strong as steel. "Every soldier in this convoy, open your packs." A murmur swept through the ranks. "Divide your food," he commanded. "There are children in this district who will sleep hungry tonight. That is unacceptable." "Sir," one officer began nervously, "our rations." That, Ibrahim cut him off, was not a suggestion. It was an order. "We did not come here to watch suffering. We came here to end it. And if we cannot sacrifice one meal to save a child, then what exactly are we fighting for?" The first soldier to move was a young woman barely older than Jamil. She opened her pack and walked toward a group of children hiding near a collapsed building. Another followed, then another. Soon the entire checkpoint transformed, not into a military post, but into a community, into a family, into hope, alive, moving, breathing. Children who had learned to survive in silence now cried openly as warm hands placed food in theirs. Laughter, weak but real, began to ripple through the dust. Ibrahim returned to the little girl. She had finished eating but now watched everything unfolding with wide, glowing eyes, as if witnessing a miracle. He knelt again and spoke softly in more. "What is your name, little sister?" Her lips trembled. "Amina," she whispered. "Amina," Ibrahim repeated gently. "That is a beautiful name. Where is your family?" Her eyes filled again, but this time she did not hide her tears. "Mama got sick. Papa left to find work. My brother, he didn't wake up one morning." Each word hit Ibrahim like a punch to the chest. This child had lost everything, yet she was still standing, still breathing, still hoping. He placed a hand over his heart. "Listen to me, Amina," he said softly, his own voice shaking now. "You are not alone anymore." He rose to his feet and spoke so the entire district could hear. "I want the name of every unregistered child. I want emergency housing now, medical teams, protection, food security plans. And I want to know how this child, this innocent soul, slipped through every safety net we claim to have." Radios lit up. Orders moved. But the greatest transformation was not logistical. It was human. Because everyone who witnessed this moment walked away changed. Some cried. Some stood straighter. Some felt faith return to their hearts. And deep inside, even the hardest soldiers remembered why they had chosen to serve. But the story is not over yet. Because what happens next will test not only Ibrahim's leadership, but the heart of the entire nation. Stay with me. What comes next will move you beyond words. Listen carefully, because what happened next didn't just change a day. It changed a nation. The soldiers, who once believed they were simply following orders, suddenly felt something awaken inside them. Their uniforms didn't feel like armor anymore. They felt like responsibility. The community that once felt invisible finally believed that someone in power could see them. And the children who had known only hunger, tasted abundance for the very first time. And there, in the middle of it all, stood Private Jamil. His tears were not the tears of a weak man. They were the tears of a human heart that had watched kindness spread like light into darkness. He had tried to help only one child, just one. He never imagined the world would change because of it. But someone had been watching. Captain Ibrahim Traoré walked toward him slowly, not as a superior officer, but as a man humbled by another's courage. And in a moment that shattered every wall of rank, pride, and distance, he embraced him, a captain holding a private, a leader holding a servant, one human being holding another. "Thank you," Ibrahim whispered. "Thank you for reminding me why we serve." And when they stepped apart, his voice rose, steady, unshaken, unbreakable. "What happened today? This is not an exception. This is our new standard. We are soldiers, yes, but we are also protectors. We will never again stand and watch a child starve. Not here. Not anywhere." First there was silence, then one clap, then another, until cheering burst like rainfall after a long, dry drought. People cried openly. Old men covered their faces. Mothers held their children close. And for the first time in years, hope didn't feel dangerous. Felt possible. Little Amina, the girl who had once looked like a shadow, smiled. A real smile. She wrapped her arms around Jamil's leg as if anchoring herself to life. In that moment, everyone understood. This wasn't about one meal. This was about who they chose to be. But destiny was still moving, because the story of that dusty checkpoint did not remain a whisper. Within 24 hours, it spread across Burkina Faso like wildfire. Videos of soldiers sharing food. Photos of Ibrahim kneeling beside a starving child. The embrace, the tears, the humanity. People didn't just watch. They felt it. In homes, in markets, in crowded buses and quiet villages. The nation saw a different kind of power, not the power that commands fear, but the power that heals. And Ibrahim Traoré knew something. He could not go back. He could not unsee hunger. He could not unknow suffering. He could not unfeel that child's fragile heartbeat. So he did the one thing leaders rarely do. He changed everything. New military protocols were introduced. Soldiers would now be trained not only to protect, but to care. Aid distribution would never again ignore the undocumented, the forgotten, the invisible. Of course, the old guard resisted. Change always threatens those who benefit from silence. But Ibrahim had something stronger than opposition. He had the people. And a nation that has discovered hope is a nation that cannot be pushed back into darkness. Meanwhile, Private Jamil, the quiet man who gave away his meal, became a symbol, not of fame, not of heroism, but of simple, stubborn compassion. When asked why he did it, he always answered the same way. "I just saw a child who needed food. Nothing more, nothing less." And his truth pierced hearts. Amina didn't disappear back into the crowd, either. Ibrahim made sure of that. She received care, safety, love, and slowly, the frightened shadow of a girl became a laughing child again. Her recovery wasn't just medical. It was a message. Kindness works. Compassion saves. One choice matters. 6 months later, under the warm African sky, a ceremony was held. Not one for war. Not one for medals of blood and victory. This one was for humanity. Before soldiers, villagers, and children whose lives had been changed, Ibrahim placed a new medal on Private Jamil's chest. A medal created for acts of compassion beyond the battlefield. His voice carried across the crowd. True strength is not measured by weapons. It is measured by compassion. One soldier fed one child and changed an entire nation. In the front row, Amina listened with shining eyes. And when Ibrahim finished, she ran, not walked, ran into Jamil's arms. That image would travel the world. Murals, posters, stories, songs. 3 simple words beneath them. Service means sacrifice. Years passed, and the ripples kept moving. Other institutions changed. Protocols softened. Hearts opened. People began to ask themselves the question Jamil had already answered. When you see suffering, what do you do? And whenever Ibrahim was asked why that day mattered so deeply, he would pause, his eyes distant. Because that day, I remembered who I wanted to be. A leader, a servant, a protector. Someone who understood that power without compassion is just another form of hunger. And this is why, long after the dust settles, long after the uniforms fade. The story of Ibrahim Traoré and Private Jamil will remain, because it reminds us of something we forget too easily. We all have something to give. We all can lift someone. We all can choose compassion, even when it costs us. And when we do, everything changes. So let me ask you, when was the last time you witnessed unexpected kindness? How did it change you? And what will you choose the next time a hurting soul stands in front of you? If the story touched your heart, don't let the feeling fade. Share it, live it, become part of it. Because somewhere, right now, someone is waiting for a Jamil. Someone is praying for an Ibrahim. Someone is hoping that kindness still exists. And maybe, just maybe, that someone is waiting for you. Like, share, subscribe, not for numbers, but to spread stories that remind the world what leadership, love, and humanity truly look like. And always remember, never underestimate the power of one act of kindness, because sometimes that's all it takes to change history.